We have one final section of completing the square, and these are the most difficult. And what we're going to find is there's a better way to do this. But it's a clever trick, and as you move forward, college algebra, calculus, it's good to know it. But again, there's going to be a much better way. But let's go through them here and I'll show you. So what we've had so far is that in order to complete the square, our first term here, the x squared term, always had a coefficient of 1. It didn't have a number sitting in front of it. And so that was easy. We could complete the square. Well, you can't complete the square if you've got something other than that sitting in the front. So here's the trick, and it's not all that much fun. So these first ones are going to be fine, but at the end it's going to get real bad. What we're going to do is I could divide this entire equation by that 3. I'm going to do it to the entire left side and the entire right side. So I'm going to divide everything by 3. So as long as you do it to the entire left and the entire right, it's legal. So I'm dividing, they're dividing, both sides by 3, and look what it did. It created something that's now in a form that we can complete the square. So I've got a 1 in front of there now. I could go ahead and complete the square just like we did in the last couple of videos. I'm going to cut that negative 4 in half. It's negative 2. Square it, adding 4 to both sides. And from there, it's the same thing. So I kind of ran in a room here. So they should have sent that to the other side. So we would have gotten 5 or negative 1. Okay, now I know that was quick, but let's really do one here. So the problem here is I have this 2 in the front. I can't do the completing the square with that having something other than a 1. So I'm going to divide all the left side by 2 and all the right side by 2. Okay, if I divide 0 by 2, it's still just 0, so that's fine. Okay, now we're going to complete the square, just like we did in the last one. I'm going to send the 4 over there so I can pave the way to be able to complete the square. Okay, so I cut this in half. I get 4 squared, I get 16. So I'm going to add that to both sides. Okay, I can now complete the square over here. I got n plus 4 squared equals 20. Okay, and from here it becomes the same process. Now we're going to have some harder ones coming up here with some fractions that are not fun, but this is currently the same thing. Now I could reduce the square root of 20. Okay, and since it has a root, I would go ahead and stop there. Okay, I'd love it if you try this one on your own. We're going to divide both sides by 4. Okay, now we're back to something we know how to handle. I'm going to prepare the way for completing the square by sending the 14 to the other side. Now, if I cut negative 6 in half, I get negative 3. I square that, I get 9. Add to one side, you got to give it to the other. Okay, so I'm ready to go now. Just completing the square. So I just hit finish this. 3 plus 5, 3 minus 5. There's my 2 answers. Okay, let me see. Is this, yeah, this is just going to be unpleasant fractions. So this is where it gets really bad. And what we will do, called the quadratic formula, is definitely the way to go on this. But we've gone this far. Let's go ahead and give it a shot so we know at least how to do it. When I divide both sides by 2, do you see that I create negative 3 halves there? And that's not much fun. Now we've done some, I don't know if we've had any as bad as this, but if I divide 3 halves, so negative 3 halves, we've got to cut it in half, so we divide it by 2. Now that's really like 2 over 1, so we keep change flip. So you may already know how this would just have made it negative 3 fourths. So negative 3 fourths is the number when we cut it in half. We're going to square that, and that's going to make 9 sixteenths. So they're adding 9 sixteenths to both sides. Having fun yet? So if we combine all of this from here, so we're just getting a common denominator, do the same trick we've been doing. We just have terrible numbers. At least at this point, when they square rooted this, that at least is nice. At least it turned into something other than a root. Put all this together and we get all the way down to here. Okay, let's really do one now. So this is going to require us to divide both sides by 3. So we're going to get r squared minus 2/3 r equals 7. Okay, so we've got to cut this in half. Now I can prove it to you, but it's going to be negative 2/6. So what you're doing is negative 2/3 divided by 2. Keep change flip, you're going to get this. Now in order to know what to add, we're going to square that. You square the top, you square the bottom. So I want to add 4/36 to both sides. Yikes. Yeah, that's no fun. I've never seen one that bad. Okay, so over here we're going to get r minus 2/6 squared. Over here, geesh, I'm busting out a calculator for this. So I need to get them both over 36. So this is 252 over 36 plus 4 over 36. All right, so if well, we better do this one more step. Running out of space. Okay, now we're going to square root both sides. Get r minus. Oh, I know what I should have done. What would have made this easier back here is if I would have simplified this and made it 1/3. That's what we should have done. But it'll still work. Okay, I think 256 has a square root, doesn't it? Yeah, it does. Okay, so this turns out to be, I am really running out of space. I'm going to send him over. So this is 256's square root is 16. The denominator square root is 6. And so I have this. Now, I should have simplified it earlier. And we could combine these, but with these fractions, I'm okay with that. You could leave this here. But this should have been like 1/3 plus or minus 8/4. That could even go lower. Yeah, this is totally fine. You could just go with this. There's some simplification you could do there, but I'm going to let that go. Okay, so I imagine we have another one of these very unpleasant ones, so let's try another. We're going to divide both sides by 4 this time, and I'm going to get t squared plus, now so it's 2 over, so I'm dividing both sides by 4. Now it's 2 over 4, but I'm not going to repeat my mistake. 2 over 4 would be 1/2 t, and that equals 5. Now if we cut 1/2 in half, we get 1/4. We square that, we get 1/16. So I am adding 1/16 to both sides. Okay, so over here, sorry, I'm getting my common denominator over here. So this is going to be 80 over 16 plus 1 over 16. We get 81 over 16. Got t plus 1/4 equals the square plus or minus the square root of 81 over 16. I wish they wouldn't use t's. They look exactly like pluses. Okay, so I had square root, so it's like the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom. That's 9/4. So now I've got the t equals negative 1/4 plus or minus 9/4. I mean, I probably should do this. Yeah, this one's going to work out. So negative 1/4 plus 9/4 would get you 8/4. Negative 1/4 minus 9/4 would get you negative 10/4. So this is 2, or negative 5 over 2. Okay, let's see what they're throwing at us this time. Is it more just madness? Yeah, I don't see anything Other than that, it's just still really hard. Okay, I don't see anything unusual about it, just the same kind of difficult thing with more fractions. So I think we have a couple, yeah. We got two more of these. Let's press on. So I'm going to divide both sides by 4. Got x squared plus 3/4 x equals 3. Okay, so if I divide 3/4 in half, it's going to be 3/8. So if you want to prove that to yourself, you're doing this. Keep, change, flip. Now we're going to square that. We get 9/64. So I'm going to go ahead and squeeze it in here. We're adding 9/64 to both sides. Yeah, it's just really hard. The quadratic formula in the next section is going to make this pretty much irrelevant, but okay, so I'm getting a common denominator. Oops, that's not right. I'm getting a common denominator for this right side. Okay, square root both sides. I get x plus 3/8 equals plus or minus the square root of 201/64. Now 201 is not going to have a square root, but the bottom does. So sending that over. Okay, so we can do the square root of the top and the square root of the bottom, and the bottom has a square root. Now I'm sure, well, I don't know if 201 breaks down. I would go ahead and leave it like this. It may be possible to simplify the square root of 201, but it's okay with me. I don't care. Okay. Let's go again here. We're going to get rid of that 5 in the front. So dividing this whole side by 5 and this whole side by 5, I get y squared plus 3/5 y equals 2. Now I'm going to divide 3/5 by 2. I get 3/10. I'm going to square that. I get 9/100. Okay, factor this down. Ooh, that one's easier. Okay, so I got a common denominator here, so this would be 200/100. So I've got 2 and 9/100. Square root both sides. Okay, so y is going to be -3/10 plus or minus. I'm going to jump ahead a little. So I can make this individual roots to see that that would be this. Square root of 209 over the square root of 100. Square root of 100 is 10. Now, I don't think you can break 209 down, but it may be able to be done, but that's good enough for me. All right, again, I know that I'm kind of defeating the purpose of this by telling you we've got a much easier way to do those. But it's a very useful trick, again, as you move into college algebra, off into calculus. So anyway, even those really hard ones gives you some fraction practice, which is always fun.